So here we are right now at Fort Clatsop in the state of Oregon, and Lewis and Clark reached their terminal destination of the Pacific coast on the Pacific Ocean in the town of Astoria, which is home of the Clatsop Native Americans. And they established a fort here and then endured a miserable winter where precipitation and rain heavily bombarded them throughout the winter, and then they had the worst time trying to stay dry. And after the conclusion of the winter, when spring came around, they started making their trek back east.
He is practically a slave. Throughout the entire expedition, this holds true. Now, Clark's family comes from originally, more or less, a bunch of farmers. Crop growers, of course, tobacco and whatnot, out in Virginia. Well, the father had quite a number of slaves. Some of them, when he died, were sold off to other landowners. But Clark decided to keep quite a few of them around just to kind of help out while he was gone. But he only decided to take one of those with him. York was a very well-renowned sort of slave amongst his family because he was one of the hardest workers.
Here at Fort Clatsop, Lewis and Clark had to adapt, just like Native Americans did thousands of years before, in using their environment to meet their needs for food, clothing, and shelter. As you see, the lumber that you see here is native of Astoria, Oregon, the place where they finally set up their location for the winter. And you know, when you're looking at these skins, a lot of their clothes started to reflect some of the Native Americans that they were encountering. Deep beyond these trees right here is the Pacific Ocean. And what you see is the terminal destination of what Lewis and Clark, their mission was to be sent out west to discover new lands, new people, new animals, new plants. And they were successful in this. Here I'm standing with Sacagawea and her baby Pomp, who she named Jean-Baptiste. Sacagawea was a victim of being kidnapped from her Shoshone tribe when she was a lot younger, and her countenance was described by Lewis and Clark as being one as being defeated. And she was quiet and didn't have much emotion about anything because she was submitted to the authority of her sometimes violent husband, Toussaint Charbonneau, who was a French fur trader. Now, it was also written in the diary, in the journals of Lewis and Clark, that she was deathly ill in the journey where she accompanied Lewis and Clark, where they hid her in the back of the pirogue because she was just so sick and they were so nervous about what would happen to Jean-Baptiste, which they affectionately called Pomp. And Clark also several times mentioned possibly adopting him as well. And Pomp eventually became a very successful trader out west in the development of the Old West, and Sacagawea, not much is known about her. An urban legend actually points to the fact that she may have grown to be a very old lady, or she may have succumbed to a fever in her 20s. And now you have to understand, she was just a girl when she was a mother, and she was accompanying Lewis and Clark. And the importance of her on the Lewis and Clark expedition is because she was following Lewis and Clark, and in accompanying them. We were waiting right here. By Sacagawea joining Lewis and Clark on their journey, she was a symbol of peace, whereas when a group of men would actually go towards Native American tribes, they would look at them as a possible conflict. And when she joined them, she was just a symbol of peace, and they had no worries because women never joined war parties. The purpose of Sacagawea on the Lewis and Clark expedition was to be a translator, but also she pointed out foods that they could eat without getting seriously sick. And because she was such an expert at using her environment for her food, clothing, and shelter, she would prove invaluable on their journey.